Hello and welcome back around the bonfire. It's a joy to have you on a victorious Friday here in Chicago. Just John today, no Tim, but I am joined by MLS Apple TV match analyst Neil Sika. Neil, thank you so much for being here. We're excited to have you and even more excited to hear you on the call Sunday against Portland Timbers.
John, it's great to join the bonfire. My favorite place to be, at least in the moment.
Love it. Love it. Well, we appreciate the time. We're going to kind of jump right in, talk a little bit of Chicago and Portland here today to get people as ready as we can for this. Gosh, man, Tim and I have joked this week. It feels like every single day we're doing something with how the turnovers have been between Leagues Cup and now jumping right back into league play.
Yeah.
Neil, obviously great week for the Fire. 9 points out of Leagues Cup, 3 wins in regulation. Portland, a little less so, but still a victory in Marti Cifuentes' first match as manager last night. Just kind of curious, as you kind of get ready for Sunday, 30,000 feet, how you're looking at this game and the matchup on the field.
Well, this isn't disrespect to Leagues Cup, but I'm excited to get back into domestic play. And I'm really excited for this game because both teams are playing well. Some of it galvanized because of the way they played in Leagues Cup. But even before that, Chicago had the nice win against Charlotte and a couple of tough games before that against Inter Miami and New York City. And then for Portland, there were stretches even last year when I saw this team and this year where they've had a lot of great components. And it's nothing against Phil Neville. It's just I think that there was underwhelming nature when they played. And I think Jack Cassidy flipped a few things around, started to get the best out of them in the interim. You beat your rival twice, Seattle, and they're humming, like playing probably to the level that I think a lot of their fans expected them to heading into Leagues Cup. Had a really good Leagues Cup, had the tough loss to America and what was a very partial crowd for the opposition. And Fire fans know that based off of the Cruz Azul game last night. And I want to talk about those atmospheres. But two teams that are playing well and that have a shot to make a deep run, because I think while you've gotten Nashville and Miami at the top of the East and in the West, Vancouver and LAFC, okay, but I think it's still wide open for a team that could come out here in the second half and make a playoff push and become an MLS Cup champion.
Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned kind of the change post Phil Neville, and I feel like every so often you see these teams that are they have the pieces, they're struggling, they're not putting it together, and it's so easy to blame a manager in those situations, and so often it feels like, hey, you actually need a lot more than that. And this is the first, at least the most immediate to me, that I think of and go, oh my gosh, maybe it really was just the manager. Maybe it really was something about Phil Neville wasn't clicking. Again, no disrespect to him, but just that's the way things go, right? And you look at, gosh, you said it well. Two teams that are both flying, some different results in Leagues Cup. And now Fire going back to Soldier Field for this one. Environment should be a little more pro-Fire. But it does feel like, I mean, you mentioned the environments there. Leagues Cup has been such a unique experience. It does kind of feel like this is almost a reset before you have to rush right back into whatever comes next.
It is. And, to the game last night where you're almost feeling like you're up against it in your own building because of the nature of the Cruz Azul fans. But I will say this, like, if the competition is going to go where the leagues want it to go and to take another step within the fans, and it's hard to connect it all right after a World Cup when then you have 3 games of domestic league play and then jump right into Leagues Cup, just the nature of the schedule. But those are the type of atmospheres we need in these Leagues Cup games. And if it happens to be that, all of these Cruz Azul fans and you've got 90% of SeatGeek Stadium packed with that, I felt it was a playoff game, electrifying within the first 20, 30 minutes. And when the Fire scored both of their goals, I'm like, I can barely hear the Fire fans amongst the Cruz Azul fans. But I think that atmosphere is a blueprint of what we need. And there will probably be more games going forward that are played in Mexico to create that balance. But when you have a packed building like that, and when also the stakes are high with both teams having a lot to play for to advance, and look, everyone can point to this and that about the format and goal differential, but still, when you get to the nitty gritty, now you're playing for Champions Cup spots. And the Fire, it's nothing to sneeze at, winning 3 games here, and a real opportunity now to position themselves to play some continental football and to survive a situation like that where they're playing as the opposition in their own building, but they mastered it well, and they've been doing it all competition.
It is a little funny looking at the way the knockouts shake out, where you get Monterrey in the round. Fire finishes the overall top competitor, right?
Hmm.
9 points plus 5 goal differential. And they get Monterrey in the quarterfinals. They would hypothetically get either a side you're intimately familiar with, Columbus Crew, or maybe more likely Club America in the semis. And it's like, man, all that just to get the harder of the two sides of the knockout. Let's just say that. Um, it's yeah, but it's a lot of fun. We got a chance to talk to Tom Mayo, who's the executive director of Leagues Cup, and he kind of spun us this vision of this is a tournament that, while it is based in novelty, right? You don't see this anywhere else in the world. The competitive level of these games can still be incredibly high, and I feel like. I mean, you called some of these games, so you probably know better firsthand than I, but it did feel like that came through, right? The competition felt like it was there. The rivalry felt like it was
Yeah.
there. And overall, man, I got to say, I thoroughly enjoyed it from the team I watch and cover was winning, but also B, as a neutral watching some of these other games. It was a unique experience.
Yeah, and that's the hope, I think, outside of the big 4 or 5 in Mexico that have fan bases here, the Chivas, the Tigres, the Cruz Azules, uh, America, Monterrey, to a larger extent. I think now you're also familiarizing yourself with some of the clubs that might not be making the headlines on a regular basis. I mean, Juarez again left just shy of qualifying from the top 4, and a team that's essentially been mid-level to bottom level in Liga MX for the last several years. And you also get these heated, contested games that might create a little bit more of a rivalry. Like I think of the Salt Lake Atlante game. I had Minnesota Atlante, and Atlante has a proud history, and they're back. They're in this competition for the first time, but back in Liga MX for the first time in like 12 years, because that's the crazy part too. No promotion relegation. People are buying like franchise spots to get back up to the top level. Um, it's allowed me, and I think to a greater extent, maybe the fan, to invest and say, all right, what are these teams really about? And let's learn a little bit more about the history. And I think that's been very helpful just as a casual, regardless of working the games and being a broadcaster on them, to dive deeper into this league, because there's a lot of fascination with it, and I think we've got ourselves something that could build again with some better competition. I think the games were better played and not as choppy this year, and I think part of that is the fact that while MLS might be in mid-season, they still had that long break. So
Mhm.
you're playing 3 games just like the teams in the Aperture had played. So there was maybe a little bit more balance in terms of like a reset preseason, and everyone kind of on equal terms.
Yeah, and we'll see that even more so next year when MLS actually finally shifts to their fall to spring calendar. Wait, let's talk about the game at hand as well, because we're here, so we probably should. Um, I think looking at Portland, the two names that jump out to me, obviously the big one is Kevin Kelsey, right? Scored again last night, opening goal for Portland. On a bit of a tear, now starting to see some European interest. And the other name that pops out, ironically, another. Is this the first ever MLS matchup between two former Hammarby managers? I think it may be. Marti Cifuentes making his debut as head coach of Portland Timber last night. Ironically, a bit familiar with Marty and his styles because I watch a lot of Queens Park Rangers, but those are the names that jump out to me. Is there anyone else in Portland that you're looking at that Fire fans should kind of be keying in on, or is that kind of the guy in Kevin?
Well, Calvin Kelsey has been exceptional here these stretch of games. I know even Phil Neville, going back to conversations with him, was super high on this guy and developing him, and it was tough to maybe get consistent minutes when he was in Cincinnati, but he's still a young guy. And now he scored like 8 and 9, finding himself in the right spots. Velda is this freelance talent that can make things happen. I think now their attacking pieces, much like the Fire's attacking pieces, they're a real threat going forward. They always have been in transition, but I think a little bit more game control and ball in the midfield. And now that Cole Bassett's settled in, and whether you pair him in the middle with a Caicedo or a Diego Chara, I think they've taken the game to the opponent a little bit more than just sitting back and waiting for their moment, as they previous done before this run. So I'm looking not only at Kelsey, but kind of the reemergence of a guy like Ari Lassiter, who's playing a lot more under both Jack Cassidy, and he started last night. So there's weapons on the wings. Anthony was kind of preferred at the start of the season, but he's not a bologna sandwich. This is a team that, again, the sum of the parts, and there are a lot of good parts. You put them together, and I think now they're starting to deliver the confidence and belief in the way they can go forward in the attack and score some goals. I like the reemergence of a Kamal Miller too, like playing where it was tough for him to get minutes, and there was rotation in the center back. Finn Sermons, for those who aren't familiar, has really emerged as one of the best young center backs in MLS, and his run at the World Cup, scoring at the World Cup. So who knows how long he'll be at Timber? But I think the components, the young components, are there, and now you maybe get that little bit of a new coach bump, or Jack Cassidy changes a tweak or two, and Marti Cifuentes. I think the key for him now is just to ingratiate, just like they had been over the course of that, because it's not easy to take on essentially a third manager, continue the run of form that they've got, and now going on the road, coming on Sunday against a team that's been very good in so many facets this year, and that's why I think it's building for a pretty good game.
Yeah, it's funny. You mentioned Ari Lassiter scored I believe, the final goal
I know I
last
didn't
night
give
for
you like
Portland.
one
And
single individual guy. I gave you a bunch,
no, you're good.
you know.
But I mentioned Ari to say, like, he was a guy who played briefly in Chicago. I
Yeah,
think maybe 2 months, 6 games, something like that. And watching him then, and even since then, it's always felt like there's something missing. Like, he seems to have all the tools to be a successful player in this league, and it just, not that he's been poor, but he's never maybe quite reached the level you would think he would. And so to see some of that is interesting. You mentioned kind of they want to bring the game to you, and I think that's what interested me about the Marti Cifuentes appointment. Is he is a guy who wants, like Greg Berhalter in a lot of ways, to play a very attractive style of football,
yeah,
right? He wants to kind of take the game to the opponents. He doesn't want to sit back and absorb pressure. Greg may be a little different in terms of inducing counter presses, however you want to talk about that. It is interesting, and it's one of the things that concerns you as a Fire fan. Jack Elliott, not necessarily on his best feet right now with some injuries. Joel Waterman, who has played well since coming back from the World Cup with Canada, but hadn't really played in the, 7 months prior to that, right?
right. Sam
So it
Rogers
does
got a
kind of,
game, right, in Leagues Cup. I mean, that you're leading into the big question about the center back rotation, and with Mboazi out for the rest of the year, is there help on the way? Who are you going to sign that might bolster the depth? Because if they lock that down and maybe add some help in the defensive midfield, I think this is, on paper, it looks like a team that could be an MLS Cup to me. I said that even at the start of the year. I was very bullish on the chance that what Berhalter has built in a few short years, they were going to turn it around.
yeah, a very trendy dark horse pick this offseason for sure. I think we heard that from a lot of people we talked to preseason. Was like, oh, well, I'm telling everybody, keep an eye on the Fire because you never know what's going to happen. Now there's still talks around Leon Goretzka. A really outstanding tournament from Sergio Orahel, who hadn't seen the field in the first half of the
He
season.
played a lot of minutes last year, right? And now it's
Yeah,
like dip down because Taletros comes in. So um, that's another key aspect of Leagues Cup. Guys who hadn't been playing regular rotation minutes, an opportunity for them to say, hey, remember me? I can still get it done, and you can rely on me maybe in a game where you're going to need it in the back half of the season, or even beyond that, someone who can be a consistent impact player for you.
or flip the script of a guy who's been sitting as a sub and now gets the chance to start some games, and you have Puso Dite on a brace last night. I mean, it's hard to look at the tournament, at least for the Fire's sake, and not say that's your man of the whole thing. You know what I mean? Just
Awesome.
outstanding performances day after day.
Yeah, just such a electrifying, slippery little winger. Not only the goals, but what he's done in terms of his isolation in 1v1. And the last Fire game I had was the Red Bulls game, the one they lost at home on Mother's Day weekend. And it was right around the time that was his first or second appearance or something like that. He was starting to get minutes, but he was starting to come on, and Greg was very bullish about this kid and what he might bring to the table. And now that's just another intricate part with a very vaunted front four, front five, if you're including Gutman, or at least the fullbacks that are getting forward, and Kibalud and Zinkernagel healthy. I mean, there's just so much intelligence with the runs, and you add Lewandowski, and whether Bamba is in form or not, there's threats. I mean, you have to. It's hard to game plan around that if you're an opponent going in and facing the Fire with all they have on paper that could break you down in a numerous amount of ways, and Dite adds just another wrinkle to it, so it makes them more dangerous.
It's funny, we're 15 minutes in. That's the first mention of Robert Lewandowski.
Yeah,
You'd
right.
think that would come up earlier, right?
Yeah.
Um,
It's like
I'm
status
curious.
quo. We know he's gonna be there. Like,
Yeah. Well,
and that's
I
the
am.
thing for me, not to interject. Like, Greg is
No,
always
go ahead.
so good at the club level with his striker development. Now you've got a guy who's accomplished everything there is at the position and beyond. I mean, he's 10 guys' careers in one.
Yeah.
And I'm fascinated to see how that still continues to manifest because he's starting to click a little bit more in terms of what everyone expects him to do in scoring goals. But if you look at Greg's history, like he got the best out of Kai Kamara, and then the Ola Kamara was a rather unknown in Columbus. Chelsea Zardes, it goes on with Ugo Kuipers, which might be somewhat of a relative unknown to MLS fans, and then now he takes off as one of the best pressing forwards and leading the Golden Boot before he departs to Monterrey. So I could name numerous players where he's just gotten the best out of that striker position, and it goes all hand in hand with how he builds the attack. So it's an opportunity for Lewandowski to really feast and bolster, and maybe even be a Golden Boot contender by the end of the season.
Well, and it's interesting. I think the more time that passes, you saw it really well in the Cruz Azul game. Is he's just hit the gravity of Robert Lewandowski is giving Philip Zinkernagel, Puso Ditejan, Martin Haile Selassie when he's on these opportunities, right? This space around goal because you have to devote a certain amount of manpower, a certain amount of tactical ideal to stopping maybe the best true number 9 of his generation, right? It's been kind of an interesting wrinkle of I don't know that he's going to score as many goals as we expect him to, but I think the team may actually still be better for it, if that makes sense, which was kind of a question mark, right? You let Hugo Kuipers leave, bring in Robert Lewandowski, and as weird as it sounds, there's a little bit of a question.
It
I
was,
am
and I
curious,
think
and
if you're looking at the whole perspective, right, John, like the defensive structure and some of that press and what Kuipers is really good at outside of just scoring goals, that commitment to it. Not that Lewandowski can't do it or be effective, but support around him to make sure that you're getting the same key triggers to be as effective in that rest defense or the phases of the game that will win you the ball back.
100%. We're close to wrapping here, so I
Yeah,
normally
I
ask
want
for
to
a
say
score
too, like,
prediction.
we were
Go ahead.
talking about Portland, like Kelsey's been on fire, and one of the things that comes to mind too, the balance now for Marti Cifuentes with Victor Janssen, right, who's getting into fit, but this is a really good goal scorer in his day too. So how do you not break? Look, you're going to play the best guy who's in form, but if you're also spending money on this guy and you expect him to come in and make an impact, how do you balance that out without taking away or giving more fragility to a guy like Kelsey, who's playing his best MLS soccer right now and rolling with it? Those are the decisions he's being paid to make. And so I'm interested to see as Janssen's made some small cameos here, getting going, and maybe not 90 minutes fit to start, but that's another thing for the Timbers fans and for Portland that I'm looking forward to see how it plays out down the rest of the season.
Yeah, and that is, I think, maybe the blessing of the World Cup break for a lot of these teams, and I know the Fire probably feel that way, is you have a really packed, 2 months here, right?
Mhm.
Is something like 20 games coming after the break, plus Leagues Cup. The Fire obviously have a makeup somewhere in there for their game with Vancouver. So both these teams, no shortage of midweek games, which hopefully means no shortage of rotation to keep these guys fresh and sharp going into the postseason, let's say, hopefully for both teams. I think I'd expect it at this point. Um, Neil, but before we wrap, I always ask for a score prediction. I'm not going to ask you for that for obvious reasons. I
I'm
do
gonna,
want to
I'm
ask
gonna
the.
my prediction is, do we see the football grid line since the Bears are playing on Saturday against my Cleveland Browns? Um,
Almost
we with
definitely.
those genetics, yeah. Maybe the
The
rain
the
will
question is how much of the sea.
Yeah, right.
But I am curious though. The other one I was asked, we always ask for a spark, and given your role as a slightly more neutral observer, you're welcome to pick from either side. But essentially, the player you're expecting to make the biggest impact.
Well, I think you roll either with Andrew Gutman, because it is
Mm,
Gutman Day on Saturday
yeah, on
this
Saturday.
evening,
Yeah.
and
If you want to get your head shaved,
his
you know.
threat, yeah, nah, I like what I still have, so I'm gonna keep rolling with it. Um, You can't turn away from Puso right now. I mean, he's the headline name for the Fire. I'm excited to see Lewandowski live for the first time, but Puso's play has also given Greg Berhalter some questions about, like, when Jonathan Bamba is back and fully integrated again to the team, because I know he's missed some time away, and uh, just back and forth, like, who's your guy there when it matters most. But I'm looking to see if Puso is going to be continuing what he did in Leagues Cup now into the back half of the regular season.
Yeah, love that.
And the center back,
Hard
no,
to
they do Kelsey. So I'm giving you multiple things to look at from the perspective of the announcers in the game.
love it, love it. Yeah, no, it's hard to go against Puso in this one, right? Just with the form and everything else, and frankly, he's fun to watch. So
Yeah,
that'll be a fan favorite. The folks in South Africa will appreciate that for sure.
for
Um,
sure.
Awesome, Neil. Well, thank you so much for being here. We'll wrap it up, but once again, Neil Sika, MLS match analyst for Apple TV. Thanks so much for joining us again. Anything you want to point folks towards, even just socials, anything like that, or if otherwise, we'll see you at the match on Sunday or
Yeah, watch the
on the
match.
game.
We'll provide the entertainment there. Thanks for having me, John. It's been great to be with you, and looking forward to a great game and getting back into MLS play for pretty important 2 months here coming up.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Love it. Once again, Neil Sika, MLS match analyst for Apple TV. For our illustrious producer, Austin, I'm John. Thanks so much for joining us around the bonfire, and come on, you men in red.